Welcome to the second episode of Trans.Missions, our Google Hangout series devoted to linking the transformational community at home. Each episode is going to feature artists, musicians, festival organizers, activists, and speakers dedicated to connecting fans through music, exploring and understanding different cultures, and creating a more sustainable future. I'm your host for these conversations, Anand Harsh. Today, we're joined by producer and composer Rab Clinton, better known as Random Rab. Welcome to Trans.Missions, Rab.
Thank you, An. How you doing?
I'm good.
Thanks for
I'm good.
having me on.
It's been exactly a week since I saw you perform last. You headlined the One Up on Colfax in Denver for New Year's Eve, and I've been dying to ask you about the performance. First of all, you played the Fillmore Auditorium right next door back in October with the Polish ambassador. What adjustments do you have to make when you move from a large concert hall to an intimate club, and vice versa?
Oh, that's a good question, and especially, I mean, the Fillmore, a sold-out Fillmore show in Denver is something I've never experienced before. So in a way, I don't think I was ever even able to fully prepare for the how awesome that felt to be, because I've seen a lot of those people in the crowd at different gigs, different festivals, but I felt like everyone was there all at once. Um, And I'm really in that environment. When I was on stage, I remember looking around, and you can see like all these different zones happening, different pockets of energy. People are hanging out on the balcony, some people are at the bar. There's, you have people right in front of you on the dance floor. So really, I feel like in that kind of that Fillmore type environment, I'm really just creating. I feel like I'm a part of the architecture and helping create space around an event that everyone just wants to be at. And whereas at the One Up for New Year's, it's such an intimate space. The music is a lot more kind of compact. It's almost like you're in a car on a car trip, a road trip with people. So the vibe's a lot more kind of, yeah, it creates that sense of intimacy and more exploring more subtleties in the music. Whereas in a large show, I feel like it's less about the subtlety and more about the overall vibe. Of course, it's still something I'm learning as to how to accommodate both those different environments because they are so different, and that goes for any type of show, whether it's an outdoor festival, sunrise set, or your friend's living room, whatever. Each environment requires a different state of mind, and that's part of the fun of doing a live show and experiencing where the music takes you.
We talked about this a little bit after your set, but I was blown away by how much house and even drum and bass made its way into your set. Is that a time and place thing, or is that really where your interests are now?
Well, it's interesting because when I first started making electronic music, I thought that there was really only house and techno type beats that was like all I really knew. Until I got into, I worked at a music store, and they had all these scratch records, old hip hop. It's just the beat, and you used it to kind of create your own sort of remixes on the fly. And I started listening to these beats, and I was like, these beats are just sick, and it really changed my perspective on like types of rhythms I wanted to use in my own music. But this last year I went to Portugal, went to Boom Festival, heard a lot of psytrance and all the four on the floor stuff, and I think it kind of just reminded me that that music is still kind of there. So for the New Year show, I wouldn't say that this is the new direction of my music, but I will say that I've definitely been exploring this type of music, and I felt it was appropriate for New Year's because in my past experience on New Year's, it can be challenging to play a super down-tempo set just because the vibe often is so high, and there's a lot more kind of just like it's a party.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
More celebratory, and so the dreamy, drippy, down-tempo stuff can kind of fall flat in a way because it's just not really the right place for it. Of course, anything's possible. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from doing that on a New Year's show, but so anyway, so for this show in Denver, I didn't plan the set out, but I kind of put all those songs in a big list of songs that might be cool to play depending on the vibe of the crowd. And when I got there, I could really sense this sort of like explosive energy that I wanted to contribute to. So playing those beats and that faster kind of rhythm seemed appropriate. And that drum and bass track you're actually talking about that I played at the end, that's actually an older track from like 2004 or something. So in a way, I'm just kind of completing the circle, you know, of bringing all the different forms of music together.
That totally makes sense. I was wondering if, on one hand, we're in a BPM arms race where everyone just has to push the tempo higher and higher and higher to keep everyone's energy and activity up as the night progresses, or if we really are living in this cyclical industry where the house of the 80s and the drum and bass of the 90s is really coming back into vogue, and maybe even some of these younger producers who weren't around for those heydays, or even veteran producers who weren't even dabbling in that, or maybe are revisiting their older work, are bringing it back. And maybe it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah, it's really it's interesting because in Europe, I feel like what's current now is that steady heartbeat rhythm on almost every song. You know, at least in the festivals that I've experienced over there, everywhere you go, that's the rhythm that they're using. And in a way, that sort of is one of the big distinguishing factors, especially like on the West Coast scene, is that broken beat is a kind of it's the personality of our scene. But at the end of the day, when I'm composing music, I don't really generally think of it as fast or slow, because it's really it's time. You're not changing time. You're not changing the speed of time or the speed that music is actually leaving the speakers. You're only accenting different elements of it that, you know, it creates this illusion of speed. You know, so different musical forms have that have different elements of where you're putting that accent, where you're basically dropping the kick and the snare, is kind of like the difference between drum and bass, hip hop, trance, whatever. You know, if you just change those around, you're getting a completely different form of music. So that, and it's interesting how in electronic music, how that really is the main thing. And I think that, yeah, we'll see, you know, where it's going to go, and maybe it is a BPM arms race. I mean, in a way, for me, like when I first started making the down tempo music, everybody was like, it's too. Not everybody. The complaints I got, if I did get any, were that it was too slow. And people were like, it's too slow, it's too slow. And then when dubstep came out and dropped the BPM down to like, you know, 72 beats per minute or whatever, then I hear, you know, then I hear maybe it's too fast, or, you know, so it's interesting how the whole perception of the scene can really move so drastically, because, you know, when I first got into the scene, it was like breaks, you know, 128 beats per minute, and then all of a sudden dubstep, and I'm just like, it's just swinging all around, you know, and it's interesting to try and just maintain who you are and what you do within all of that, you know.
Psytrance is still king of the festival scene in Europe and Australia, and you know some of your contemporaries in this scene, Spangle, Desert Dwellers, came from that Psytrance world. Is that something that was familiar to you, or is this sort of a discovery period from you, going out and seeing Psytrance at these festivals? I wonder where your perspective is with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been familiar with psytrance, and of course, you know, there's certain psytrance music that I've, like Spangle, for instance, where I've always been like, I love this music. I think what I learned in Europe, though, is that they'll do it for 6 days straight, non-stop, on multiple stages, until that's all you can think is psytrance. Now that honestly is a little much for me, but after you put yourself through that experience, you cannot go home and not be affected by that, because you're just, it's like it's carved out of space in your brain. You just like, you will think psytrance, you know, for a long time. So I kind of, when I got back from Europe, I really almost felt this just compulsion to just get it out of my system, to create some kind of, I didn't really make psytrance songs, but I had to kind of get that rhythm out of my head because I couldn't get it out.
The psytrance exorcism.
Yes, exactly. But what I discovered along the way is that there's elements within that, even though, you know, for a lot of people it can be it can sound repetitive, or, you know, kind of have an intensity to it that maybe they're not comfortable with. But what I learned about psytrance is it's all about the, well, for me, what I noticed is it's about the hive mind, about how it's almost like this archaic language of like the ants or something, where it's just like it's like the baseline programming of human consciousness and the brain, and how because it can repeat for the way it repeats and for days and days and days, it does create this sort of like sense of one mind with the community. And so that's something I've taken from it and tried to learn from and apply those elements of what I did like about that music into the music I'm making now. Where that's going to lead, I don't know if I'm really ready to make a psytrance album, but there's always something to learn from every form of music that you explore. So I'm just trying to keep that moving. And also, I got some gear like this. I don't know if you can see this, but I have a Juno 106 keyboard here, which is kind of like a ubiquitous psytrance machine.
Okay.
And the tonality of this thing is just insane, and it really just I understand now a lot more about why this instrument was so important in that scene, and I've taken this instrument and been using it a lot in my music now. So that's kind of where I guess the crossover is happening the most.
That's wild. That's wild. Do you think that there is a certain BPM where American audiences are going to top out, or do you think that because of the influx of all these international artists and maybe, as we're pushing into faster and faster music, that psytrance could finally enjoy the sort of, if not mainstream, at least underground success that it never really got, except in very, very small circles, very small influential circles, I might add.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing about psytrance is that there's a psytrance scene like everywhere in the world. It's kind of like this little secret language that if you're into it, you're into it, and you'll find the parties. And I know that there's psytrance parties happening on the West Coast. They're not, like you said, they're not as big as they are internationally. I don't know if it's ever going to take hold here. I'm not sure if Americans are. I think we got just too much individuality and too much personality to like really fully go there. I mean, I'm not, whatever that means, I don't know, but that's what's coming off the top of my head. But as far as the BPM thing goes, I mean, because like I was saying before, because it's a cyclical thing with it's just where you're dropping the accent thing, it's like inevitably you're gonna things are gonna maybe accelerate, and then it's gonna just cut in half, and somebody's gonna, because if everybody's playing fast music and you walk up there with the slow beats, you're gonna be the only person doing it, and people are gonna be like, this is so fresh, and
Sure.
vice versa. If everybody's playing slow music and you drop a faster thing. So I think that the relationship between, if you're just following the crowd, sure, maybe you'll end up going along this path, the journey, wherever the BPMs are leading you. I think we went through a really slow phase with the dubstep, like just that's about as slow as it's going to get, I think. And we'll see if it's going to accelerate and go back. Who knows? I mean, drum and bass breaks. I don't know. It always has seemed to me, though, that the fringe drum and bass tempos, like drum and bass or the really super fast psytrance, those types of tempos will always be kind of fringe. Those never be mainstream. And I think that the real sweet spot for the mainstream community will probably be more. Oh, I guess, around 120 beats per minute. I mean, I even saw this thing where somebody did a big graph of all the Billboard top 100 songs for the last like 50 years and did an average of the BPM, and it's about 118 beats per minute. And that's for all the mainstream labels for hit songs. And then some of the more fringe labels, their BPMs would either be much slower or much faster. So it's almost like the mainstream hovers around that tempo, and whatever fringe element you have is either going to be faster than that or significantly slower. So I don't know what that means, but yeah.
That's really interesting. We're taking questions from fans, and we've got one in from Pat Nordine in Minnesota. He'd like you to compare and contrast your sunrise sets and your peak hour sets. If somebody's not familiar, with what you do, your sunrise sets have become such a big part of who you are and establishing yourself. Tell people how you approach those in preparing for them.
Well, I think that it's one thing about the sunrise sets is that's different than about any other set that I'm playing is that we're trying to align the set with a celestial event, the rotation of the Earth into the sun. Whereas like a main a main slot is usually based around the timing of the club and when alcohol is being stopped and all these different factors. It's more of a human created sort of world. So I think that's like the first break there, is that I can't stop the sun. No one's going to stop the sun. If you're late, the sun's going to rise with or without you, kind of thing. So just being aware of what you're really aligning with, I think makes one difference. If you stay up all night and you make it till sunrise, you're going to be in a completely different state of mind than if you just woke up in the morning. There's something about that state of mind um, that is more raw, and I find that often people will spend an entire night listening to heavy music, and by the time sunrise comes around, it's like they've worked out a lot of the emotions. They've danced, they've connected with their friends, they broke up with their girlfriend, whatever they've done that night that was a significant thing. They're kind of like done with all that stuff.
Sure.
And then the sunrise comes, and it's just like people are, including me, are just more raw and more open to the experience of just like opening your eyes to life, I guess. Also, an interesting thing about sunrise that I notice a lot from stage is that, throughout the night, you really can only be aware of what's about 10 feet around you in a little pod because it's so dark and there's all the lights. So you run into groups of friends and you see them, you're like, hey, what's up? And you move on to the next group, whatever. And then the sun comes up and you can look all the way across the dance floor and see all your friends hanging out on top of some art car or whatever. And everybody starts to like kind of congregate into their larger senses of community, and you get this really sense that the whole dance floor is hanging out as one crew rather than these little pockets of crews that happen more in the night vibe. And as a performer, I really feel that too. It's like I feel like instead of being providing space for lots of energies, at the sunrise set, we're all just hanging out, one big crew. And it's almost like you could hear a pin drop amongst the thoughts of everyone within you. So I usually allow myself at a sunrise set to be more vulnerable emotionally to what I'm playing, to really contemplate my music and think about my life and where I'm at. And whereas the night set's a lot more kind of like we're on a journey through, like on a serpent flying through the cosmos. So that's my long-winded delineation of what maybe the difference is. There's probably infinite more things I could say about it, but I love them both equally. But the sunrise thing has become sort of, it's like my home now. I always feel like that's really where I'm home.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, you're flying around, you're doing multiple festivals in a weekend. Do you stay up through the night for your sunrise sets, or have you had to get in a nap for your sunrise sets? And if so, does that change where you are and where the music is? I can imagine with that vulnerability, any sort of these variables is going to absolutely change where you are and where the crowd is.
It's so true what you're saying, and these variables have a significant impact on my ability to perform, or my ability to at least feel like I'm really feeling it in the moment and not just kind of operating on autopilot. I have found that
Sure.
it's better for me to stay up all night if I want to be connected to the crowd. Usually that's the case, unless I'm just like totally exhausted and have to take a nap. If I try and actually sleep and wake up, like get more than like an hour's worth of sleep and wake up, I'm really not a morning person, and I'd rather have coffee and breakfast than like be at a party. So it's kind of a bad combination for me to like wake up from my hotel and be there at 5 in the morning and kind of like, what am I doing? So, but that said, I will say that that's this is a huge first world problem here, but the biggest problem or issue that I run into being doing what I do is sleep, like really getting sleep, and so there's always that kind of you're constantly weighing this, like, okay, what time is my flight, how many hours am I looking at, like 36 hours of no sleep, am I looking at 24 hours, what's the gauge here, and I can usually pull off 24 hours without sleep, but beyond that, that's when I start to kind of go crazy.
Sure.
So I think the answer that I come up with though is like sleep when you can, sleep on the plane, sleep in the car ride, wherever you can if you need to, get it, and hope for the best.
With festival season coming up, and these dates starting to come together. Are you trying to pare down the sunrise sets you're doing? Are you trying to sort of lean into this brand and this identity that people have with you? Are you trying to do, a nighttime set and a sunrise set as much as possible? What's sort of your goal for this coming year?
I've actually have been trying to cut back a little bit on the sunrise sets, only because it's such. Well, there's two reasons. One of them is that it's a huge. It kind of creates a lot more. It's more complicated when it comes to traveling and stuff, because that really means that it's like almost like 2 days off your schedule. So because I usually I'll end up getting to the venue, in the evening, stay up all night, play the sunrise set, and try to go to the next event, and it can kind of turn to this like cycle downwards. And as a singer, I'll lose my voice and whatnot. So I have sort of been trying to like at least be more in control of when I'm going to be doing sunrise sets. Oftentimes, too, I've noticed that with a lot of festivals that aren't familiar with staying up all night, they'll often work their people too hard to stay up till sunrise as well. So you'll have sound guys, they want to go home. You'll have a whole crew of people that's just kind of cashed out. So that creates a weird experience for me, because I don't want to like just push everyone beyond their limits. So I really am just I really try and think about communicating with the promoters and with the different festivals, and understanding like, hey, is this really going to be like a special moment that it's worth it for us to try and pull off this sunrise set, or are we just doing it because we think that's going to be good? So I guess I'm not really necessarily cutting back, but I'm being more selective and trying to be more intelligent about making the right decisions of when to do it.
That makes sense. That makes absolute sense. Let's switch gears to your studio work. We got a question in from Quinn in Minneapolis, wondering where you drew inspiration from for My Corpse, which is Quinn's favorite song.
Okay. Hey, Quinn. Quinn in Minneapolis, you said?
Yes.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you like that song. That's one of my favorite songs as well. I think that was right about the time that I had gotten out of I had one of those classic nasty breakups, but then ended up going on a tour in Hawaii, and sort of rediscovering myself and life, and just had this wonderful experience, and then ended up coming back home and got this amazing house sitting gig for this very wealthy family for a month. And so they were out of town, and I was watching their house, and I set up my studio, and this guy's amazing, like, leather-bound office with this view overlooking the valley, and I was like, I'm the king of the world! Just got back from Hawaii, free, and I wrote the everything on this an Electribe, it's one of those old Korg kind of beat machines, you can do a bass line and a beat, and I wrote that. I remember writing that beat and that bass line. And just like at that time I was making really dark music, and I felt actually like this sense of like almost like embarrassment. I was like, oh, this song is just so chill and so happy. Like I can't, work on this track. But it kind of like was like this. It kept bugging me. I was like, I have to work on this track, and I was like, screw it, I'm gonna do it, and worked on this track. And I actually didn't play it out for many, many months, because I thought it was sort of like my personal song that no one else would like. Because it wasn't cool enough or big enough or dark enough. And I played it at a party, a festival. I think it was like maybe the first Lightning in a Bottle. And somebody came up to me and they were like, I love that song. And I was like, are you kidding? I was like, I didn't even really mean to play that song. I just kind of like experimented. And no, it's like, it's good, it's good. And so I eventually just got up the confidence to keep playing it out more and more. And then I was like, what was I even thinking? Like, I love this song, happy to share it. And so it was actually kind of a weird, like, pleasant surprise that people even resonated with that. And then years later, now I look at it, and it's just kind of a part of my repertoire. But I definitely remember there was a time when I thought that it was just my song, So, yeah, I'm just glad that people like it.
Last year, or actually in 2013, your big album was released, which was super warm and rich and organic, tons of live elements. Is that sort of the direction or the vein you're continuing in, or are you like the BPMs swinging the pendulum back the other way and going more synthetic and alien? I wonder where you are aesthetically right now with your studio work.
It's all over the place, honestly. I would say that in its current state, this album is probably the most kind of all over the place of any album I've made in a while, and I'm not done yet, so that could all sort of change and it can congeal. Um, but yeah, I think that the thing with the one thing I am continuing on that I learned from Release is really just trying to create everything uh, homemade, organically in the most organic way possible by using nice microphone setups and different experimental uses of instruments. And so in that way, it is a little bit more similar to Release, which is more organic album. My previous albums were, I guess, a little bit more electronic. Um, but what I've noticed too is that it's a big part of it is the different collaborations, and every person has a different piece of energy that they add to the puzzle. And so I have some new, fresh collaborations on this album that are really taking the album in new and exciting directions. So I do think that this new album will be accented by these collaborations. Will really give it the personality that will make the album unique amongst my other work.
That's exciting, and we'll return to that in a minute. But I want to jump ahead. You're playing a Gem and Jam pre-party in
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles in a little over a week with Alex and Allison Gray. Can you tell me a bit about what the Grays mean to this particular corner of the music industry? How you see them fitting into this family and this community that we've on the fly.
Yeah, well, the Grays, I think everyone in our scene can say that they're a fan of the artwork. That we've all seen Alex's artwork for years, and I've been a big fan of his artwork for forever. And just even, I mean, the first time I met him, I was just starstruck. I couldn't believe that I was actually meeting the guy. Since then, it's been one of the most incredible things is to watch how he's really changed the dynamic of an artist can headline an event. So a visual artist can be the headliner of a really large event. So I've actually opened for Alex many times, and I think that that's created a whole different world now that didn't exist before, where the visual artists, and of course Andrew Jones, I think, has played a huge part of this movement as well.
Certainly, yeah.
But now visual artists are they're on the flyers. They're getting paid. They're respected as performing artists in a way that I think is something really new and really fresh. And I've never, maybe other cultures had something like this happen in the past, and maybe this has happened in our culture in the past. But this really feels fresh, where the visual artists are really being treated as performers in a way. And I did a show in Baltimore recently, and you know how they have the stage, and then they have that kind of like crowd barricade, and there's usually a 4-foot gap where the security guard will walk back and forth. They just filled that whole area with all these visual artists, and it was just genius because it really made use of that space, which is usually this canyon of emptiness, and all of a sudden all these artists are getting the perfect spot to paint. The crowd's stoked, everyone's happy. And I really think that Alex has made that possible. And that guy is, he doesn't need to be playing these shows. The guy has got plenty of other things to do with his life. He's doing it because he loves it, and he loves our community. And I think it's really been a huge offering that he's given to the community, and it's made a big difference. So many props to him and to all the other artists who are aspiring to have careers in this community.
You are seeing this change happen, and obviously you've been at shows where the painter is off to the side. They've had to pay for a ticket. They've had to beg for a space to be able to paint. You've seen this change happen, and absolutely, the community coming together around Alex and Allison and everything they're doing is a part of that change happening. What do you see as what he's getting out of it? Because as you said, he's got so many things to be doing and working on his house up in New York. He doesn't need to be touring all over the country. What do you think that he's getting in return from this young crowd of people who's really become enamored with his artwork and his life's work in essence?
Well, I think I think historically musicians have sort of been in this interesting position to be the ones that get to be on stage and get to connect with thousands of people and meet people and get kind of like that feedback loop going with their with the people who love their work and vice versa. And artists have kind of often been left out of the equation because they work in their studios at home, and maybe they'll have a gallery opening, and that's sort of been the extent of which they're able to interact with their audience. So for an artist to get on stage and to just be amongst, even if they're not really necessarily like doing whatever, like some spectacular dance, in a hula hoop or something, they're actually like just being there, really can like inspire you to continue forward and to feel like, hey, this is like worth it, to be a part of this community. This community is like, it feels good, it feels good to be to meet everyone and to share your work with everyone. And I think for Alex, he's probably spent most of his life locked away in a little room, surrounded in canvases in his brain. So for him to have the opportunity to get out and to share his art with these crowds of people and to be a part of our community, I mean, it's just awesome. I mean, I can just say, speaking from a performer within our community, like, this community is great, and it's just like, why wouldn't you want to be with everyone all the time, just sharing? It's just so good. It just feels everyone's so cool and so supportive, and there's yeah, it's amazing.
That makes total sense. Are there some artists that we should be on the lookout for? You mentioned Alex, and obviously you've worked with Andrew Jones in the past. Are there some others that you've seen really creating some fascinating and innovative stuff?
There are. I don't know if I would want to start listing names off the top of my head right now, because I know I would leave out hundreds of people. I do think that it's the MOVA concept that Andrew's been a big part of, the Museum of Visionary Art that is traveling around. I think every artist in there deserves the attention that they're getting. It's just such an incredible group of artists that are now coming together in the visionary community, and it's now expanding to internationally. And perhaps I could do like some sort of made a posting about all my favorite artists. I like I said, I feel like if I were to name off anyone right now, I might I'd forget someone and I'd feel bad. But yeah, I'd say just keep a lookout for the MOVA gallery, and there's so many wonderful people.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about Envision, because you're going to be headlining the festival down in Costa Rica at the end of next month, February 26th through March 1st. I want to know, because they're very humble folks, and they are a part of the Trans.Missions community. They wouldn't maybe want to answer this themselves, but perhaps you can do the work for them.
Okay.
What sets Envision apart from not only mainstream festivals here in the States, but also other transformational festivals in the U.S. and across the planet?
Well, for one, it's absolutely gorgeous. The land, the ocean, the monkeys, macaws, fresh fruit, sunshine, good clean air, poisonous snakes, crabs, all these amazing things that you just don't really get a chance to see anywhere else. So I think that's like, for me, like Costa Rica, like the nature around there, it just and it creates that Pura Vida lifestyle, that vibe, where it's like nothing really happens. Everything happens a little bit slower, but it all gets done, because it's just hot, and it's like, why rush to have like enjoy life? But I also think that, like, once you get people out of their element and get, everybody down to a different country, and it's sort of, you sort of take over this whole area of this small area of Costa Rica there, and the locals, from my experience, love it because they're making money, and all the hotels are packed and the restaurants are busy, so everybody's, they're very welcoming to everyone. Um, so it doesn't really feel like an invasion. It feels more like like everybody's happy. And but once you get that kind of, it's almost like going to, like, I don't know. It's you feel like you're a community, like creating your own universe. And so you see people at the festival, you see them at the tienda, you see them here, you see them there. You just, like, everybody just, it's like this one big family. And by the time, for me, I've done every Envision festival, and by the time that Sunrise comes around, that when I play Sunrise Sunday morning, which I've done every year, it's just like there's nothing better. It's just so awesome to see everyone, and I be healthy and happy, and go to a waterfall and cool off afterwards, and then maybe go surfing in the afternoon. I mean, what could be better?
It's crazy to me that this sort of model isn't adopted by more festivals, mainstream or not. A lot of times a festival is this pseudo legal thing that's happening with maybe all the right permits in some
Mhm.
really rural part of some forgotten county in some forgotten corner of the state, and you have the locals staring the hippies down in the quickie marts, and there's this real contentious vibe that you get between festivals and the locals a lot of the time, and having been to Envision and seeing that it's half Ticos there, it's half local Costa Ricans, and they're grinning and they're dancing, and they may not be familiar with the music, but they are getting down, and they're shaking hands and meeting people who are new to Costa Rica, and sharing their homeland with these kids who are coming to this festival. It's such a different model. It's such a different approach. Do you think it's only possible in a foreign country? Do you think it's only possible in a drastically different place, or is this a model that can be adopted by all festivals to really, really get the community that it takes place in involved, and come out to the shows?
I think it's an excellent point, and I think it's really an important discussion that we, as a community, as a culture, need to have with ourselves in this country, especially. And that is that there is a movement that is trying to stop these events from happening all the time, everywhere we go. And there's only a few festivals that have been able to maintain whatever land they initially either purchased or got permitted for. I think, like, Burning Man might be one of the only festivals I could think of that's, like, been able to hold on to that piece of land for so many years. But other than that, almost every major festival, especially with our community, and look at the track record, we've been removed from the land because of red tape, and a lot of times it's because of certain factions within whether the police force or whatever authority figure decides that they want to create a problem for the festival. And even though there's, festivals disrupt the flow of whatever, life for certain people, the same way that baseball games do, the same way that any event that where people gather. I think that they are lucky in Costa Rica to have such a welcoming community, and they've done an excellent job. The Envision Festival's done an excellent job of giving back to the community and making the community feel welcome. I think one example that comes to mind when I think about the difference between what happens in this country and happens down there, there was an after party after one of the Envision festivals, and we rented a couple people had rented these really beautiful beach houses, and everybody was on the beach, totally renegade, set up a sound system. I mean, people were drinking, having a good time, just kind of being rowdy, but it was cool. A cop rolls up out of nowhere on his motorcycle, sees everybody on the beach, just totally. I don't know if we're supposed to be there or not. Just waves, goes on. That's it. And I was like, and I was so shocked. I was like, I couldn't believe that. I was like freaked out. My heart's racing. I'm like, I'm just a cop. We're having fun, cops. And it's just, there's just something about this. I don't know what happened to this country or where we went wrong in that way, but there's just so much bureaucracy and red tape. And I mean, I can't tell you how many sets I've been at where there's been helicopters flying over me, and there's like militarized police and tasings and all sorts of things just because people are having a good time. Now, granted, you know, when people are together, sometimes trouble will happen, just like anywhere else on this planet. And I'm happy that we have police and different forces to take care of, you know, people who are causing problems for the community. But to just by default go after these festivals just for having a good time, and especially with I feel like it's ratcheting up as the years go by. Like I said, with the militarization of the police force and the helicopters and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just like it just doesn't make any sense to me of why you know, adults can't get together on private land and do, you know, have some wholesome good, just have a good time. You know, I don't know what's going on with all that. So maybe we have to move to other countries and do that, you know, if that's what it takes. And I think that's why Envision Festival has been so successful, because they don't have the bureaucracy that we have here.
And now they really do have a home. They have, you know, a long-term deal with Rancho La Merced, and they've made plans to keep building year after year, and they don't have to vacate the property once, you know, March 1st rolls around, and you have to, you know, tear down the stages and tear down this beautiful art. Now they can really build and build and build. What do you think fans can expect, or is it going to be a surprise for you as well when you hit Punta Arenas at the end of next month?
I think it's going to be a surprise for everyone, you know, because like I remember the first Envision Festival, you know, I don't know, 300, maybe 500 people at the most were at that festival. It was such a small little thing, and you know, it's gone through all these different locations. And last year when we showed up, I was just like, where am I? This is a whole different universe that I've never seen before. Now I've been to the land that they're having the festival on this year. It's a beautiful piece of land. It's very tropical feeling, and not your swampy spot that we had a couple years ago. So I think that it's going to be a lot bigger this year. I think it definitely going to be a lot more people from places that, you know, we have no idea where they're going to be coming from, because I've been just seeing in the publication it's been like one of the top 10 destinations for festivals. It's gotten a lot of buzz basically. So I expect this one to probably go down in the books as one of the most amazing festivals of the year for sure internationally.
That's exciting. Following Jam following Envision, I know you've got some plans for the spring, and hopefully this can help move us down that path. Alex Bauer in Madison asks, are there more plans for live performances with Sarah and Hannah or any other artists for that matter?
You're breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if you're hearing me okay on your end, but I think you were asking me if I'm going to be doing live performances with Hannah and other artists.
Yes, and in particular as well.
Yeah, yeah. Hannah and I are going to be performing at Envision Festival together, so we're both looking forward to that. We'll probably do a few other shows. We're not touring together. I'm actually doing. Well, Cedar is. We're going to be playing some shows, but he's got a big obligation that he has to take care of in the early part of next year, so we're kind of taking a break. But I am going on tour with Saki, so I'm going to be doing a national tour with Saki, and going to be bringing in. I'm not sure this is really relevant to your question, but doing a completely designing a new stage setup and having going to be concentrating a lot on doing visuals. So, for instance, right here, this is one of my new projectors. So I'm going to have a bunch of these 8mm projectors. Are you there, Anand?
Yep, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. We're good?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I got a bunch of these old school 8mm projectors, and I'm using digital projection, and I'm going for a big mix of all different types of projection technology, and a set design which is going to be unique and kind of old school and old fashioned, but also with some high tech twist to it. So I'm really excited to bring the new tour on the road with Saki. We're going to be touring the country and going to be experimenting with people's brains. So
That's
should be
fantastic.
fun.
That's fantastic. So, with a tour in place, can fans expect some new studio releases to accompany that? When's the next time we get an EP or an album?
Right now, the album is scheduled to come out when the tour starts. So right around that time somewhere. So right now the tour is starting March 25th. So that's about the time that the album will be coming out. Going to be doing vinyl on this release as well, plus downloads, CDs, the whole thing. So we'll see. It might fall within a little time around there. I'm not gonna make that the hard drop date, but yeah, I am in this. I've been in the studio nonstop for the last couple months. I can plan on being in here as much as possible, like in the next 2 months. So the album is on its way.
You heard it here first. New music from Random Rab, new tour coming up this spring. Thanks so much for taking the time, Rab. He's going to be
Yeah.
headlining Envision Festival in Costa Rica, February 26th through March 1st. And we also want to thank our partners at Envision and Infrasound and Sonic Bloom for helping us out. And yeah, thank you so much, Rab, for joining us. And it's been just a joy talking to you.
Thank you, and I hope everyone at home has a wonderful evening. And if you've been watching, thanks for tuning in. And I can't wait to see you at the next show or in your brain with when album comes out, whatever it takes.
Thanks so much. We'll have more episodes coming soon, and fans will be able to revisit these discussions on the Uns.com's YouTube channel. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye-bye.